Welcome to the Guitar Dads Podcast, a podcast for guitar dads by guitar dads. This week, Spotify royally screwing the pooch. Will Getty rush back to the stage? Can you get away with it if it's in a band name? And we get nerdy with our very special guest. He takes us to the outer limits of the gear universe this week on the Guitar Dads Podcast. Now, the dudes who could use a lesson in gear nerdery, Matt and Dave.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mash.
And I'm Dave, and welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome, welcome, and welcome. Thank you to all of our loyal listeners. And those of you who are new, thanks for hanging out today, whenever you're listening to this. We appreciate it. We hope you come back for more. Real quick, because we want to get right to it today. You know where you can find us at Guitar Dads Podcast over on Facebook, at Guitar Dads Podcast over on Instagram, where you'll see clips of this show. And of course, if you want to support the show, go over to patreon.com/Guitar Dads Podcast, where we have a multitude of tiers. If you so choose to support us, we appreciate it. And thank you to our patrons who are already supporters. Anything else, Matt? Did I miss anything?
I think you got it. Let's get to it. Special episode today.
We got a very special episode. No real intro needed, because if you don't know the Guitar Nerds Podcast and you don't know Joe Branton, then you know what? We really don't know what to tell you. So we're just going to get right into it. Hey, Joe, thanks for joining us, man. Thanks for being on the show.
Well, thank you very, very much for having me on Guitar Dads. It's lovely to be here. It's lovely to add another guitar podcast to, I like to feel that I get to do as many of them as possible. So yeah, it's
great.
Lovely to be here.
I'm glad you're here.
Very excited to have you.
Glad to add you to the list, Joe. Awesome.
I'm disappointed that Philip Carter got in here before me, but
yeah, that's probably my fault. We wanted to make sure we were more established before we invited you on, Joe.
Well, wait a minute. That's a little bit of an insult to Philip.
Philip. I know. We're joking with Phil. We love him, man.
I know.
Philip,
we love
shout
Philip.
out to you, man. We love you. Just good fun. Anyway, what do we got here, Dave? What do we want to get into?
Yeah.
We want to get into the Dataverse.
We're gonna get in. We have so much to talk about, but let's go through some quick news notes first. There wasn't a whole lot of stuff, but yeah, let's get into the Dataverse.
Hold on, stand by. All right, here we go.
There it is. Every week is a look.
Oh,
and
I
again.
hit it again.
Oh,
into
we're going
the
in
Dataverse.
twice. Jeez. Yes.
Yeah. All right,
we're
what
not
do we got?
professionals here. So I did mention in the intro, and we've been talking about this on the pod. Listeners know. So Spotify is at it again. And they have made an announcement. They are no longer going to pay artists or rights holders with fewer than 1,000 streams annually.
Oh,
which I mean,
was it only 1,000? Was that what it was?
I think it was only 1,000 if I read it correctly.
Annually.
But annually, to give a little context to that is 2/3 of their catalog.
Really?
Which is a lot of people.
Oh, wow,
That's
I
a lot of
didn't realize it was that much. I thought
Yeah.
it was a higher threshold than that, because
I might be
I'm
wrong.
not trying
I
to
thought-
support Spotify, but that does sound quite low. But
It
nonetheless,
does.
2/3 of their catalog. That is.
I saw this in two different articles. I'm gonna if you guys talk about it, I'm gonna look this up again, because I think you're right. Now that you mentioned that, it does seem really low. But I did read it in two different places, and I thought the same thing, because I thought that's not. I mean, you think about but
what would 1,000?
I could probably
plays
upload fart sounds and get more than 1,000.
Yeah.
It plays
I think
annually.
you should try.
I think that's true. Annually, 1,000 plays is like nothing. I mean, no offense to anybody out there that has got real music up there and they don't have it, but like it's not a very high threshold. And even 1,000, based on what they pay, it can't be a lot of money individually. Right.
No, it is
Sure.
1,000. It is 1,000.
It is
annual
1,000.
stream. Yep.
Okay.
It is 1,000.
Man,
Yep.
So how much
I don't
money
know
are
if
they
that's
saving?
changed my opinion on the entire thing. Like, I appreciate why they're doing it. They're obviously doing it. They're obviously saving money, and it's there to reduce more to make it harder for the smaller artists. So I'm not saying that they're good guys, but seriously, if you've got less than 1,000, if 2/3 of their catalog are going out to people who are less not popular enough to get more than 1,000 plays a year. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm changing my opinion on it and backing Spotify on this one.
Well, here's the deal. Spotify doesn't make any money off this stuff, right? They claim they don't make any money off streaming music at all. This is what they claim, because so much of it goes to the artists, not necessarily the artists, but the publishers, right?
The publishers, right. Yep.
So it's up to like 75% or something goes to the publishers of the streaming revenue. So they don't really get a lot. They tried to make some money off podcasts. That ended up being much harder than they thought it was, because podcasts end up being very expensive to produce, which I think all three of us can say can confirm. Podcasts get expensive, especially if you want to do big fancy ones and interview people and do all this stuff. So yeah, I think they're just struggling and they're trying to come up with ideas, right? And here's the thing, which is great for us consumers, but not good for artists, which is, they can't charge people more because of the competition that's out there, right? I mean, Dave and I have said this a lot. Joe, I don't know how you feel about this. Do you use Spotify or a streaming service?
I use Spotify, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I feel like I would pay, I think it's just such an unbelievable thing that you have in your pocket. That's like, I would pay more, right?
Yeah.
But
we have. They've put their prices up annually.
Yeah.
But it's like, think about how much you pay for, like, well, maybe you don't pay for it, but like cable TV, right? Like for me, like music is important enough that maybe I wouldn't pay as much as cable, but I would pay, something along the lines of like 2 to 3 times what I pay now. Maybe I'm a real big outlier there, but what is it like Apple? I have Apple, and it's like $10 a month.
It's $10 a month. You can't beat it. But I guess my question, and I've asked this before, Joe, I'd love to know how you feel. Does it kind of, I mean, we kind of come from a little bit of the old school in a way, like, going to the record store, buying the album, being excited for release day. Does having so much music essentially in our pockets, does that kind of water down some of the excitement of music nowadays?
I don't think so at all. I think it depends what you're into, and I'm sure there are genres and types of music and music fans where, yes, that absolutely does. I guess what I'm saying there is people who like pop music, yes, I'm sure it does. But if you like weird alternative stuff, then I think, especially when it comes to vinyl records, LPs, those sort of things have never been stronger, and I think people are more than happy to keep buying those sorts of things. I think of like only at the start of this month, my favorite guitarist in the world, Omar Rodriguez Lopez, released a box set of every single one of his solo albums, including El Grupo Omar Rodriguez Lopez and the Omar Rodriguez Lopez Group. All of those albums, I can't remember how many there were, 15, 17 of them, all on a vinyl box set for 500 quid, 600 quid, something like that. And, they sold out in a couple of days because people are willing to pay that money for that stuff, to have it physically. And sure, sometimes I have a hi-fi that that I can Bluetooth music to, and sometimes in the morning when I'm feeling lazy and I'm making a cup of coffee, I'll do that. But more often than not, I'll get a record out and play that. So I like the fact that they sort of support each other. And I think that applies to weird music only, almost, maybe.
Well, I think you bring up a really good point. I was almost thinking about recently, Matt and I are big fans of Dirty Honey. And back in the day, I would have known exactly when their new album was coming out. I would have been at the record store that day or the next day to get it. And almost on like a kind of an afterthought, Matt and I were driving to a guitar store and I said, "Oh, remember the new Dirty Honey album came out a few weeks ago," and we put it on. Now I would have listened to it immediately. So I just felt like, I don't even know what the right word is to attach to it, but I just felt like I almost like watered it down in a way, like, one of my favorite bands, and I completely forgot they put out new music.
The ritual of it is gone. Like, it used to be this ritual of going to a record store. This is how old we are, Joe. I know you're not as old as we are.
I don't know. I'm 39.
Oh, are you? Okay, all right. We're a little bit older than you. We're like 5, 6. I just had a birthday about 6 years older than you. So yeah, so you remember going to like stores back in the day, Joe, right? It's like
Yeah,
it was like a ritual, and now it's like it is gone, so that excitement is a little bit gone. I mean, there's this whole thing about pre-saving, which is kind of cool, I guess, but I don't know. It's not the same. But vinyl, but you're saying you're into some of the vinyl, which I think is incredibly cool because it brings some of that stuff back, like holding the record and
seeing the
liner notes.
artwork at a proper size,
Yes.
getting the inlays to it. Maybe some
Yeah.
of the interesting artists who'll do things like they'll put a maybe there'll be a little loop repeat at the end of a record, or a handful of people. Bands like King Crimson take off the central label on your record, and you've got a hidden track on the very
that's
middle.
pretty cool.
Oh, yes,
Yeah, that's
very
cool.
cool.
That's-
Stuff like that.
There's
stuff like
so
that.
much you can do with a record. It makes
Fun
it so much
stuff.
fun.
It's so much fun. Yeah, Dave, we got to get into the vinyl. Like this just has to happen. It sounds like
We've talked about it, and I think the fact that even the younger generations, I mean, listen to how old we sound. The younger generations are still buying music, and I think that's it bodes well for physical music. Is not, at least right now, is not going away. So, and I love it. I love it.
I like how there's all these cool colors of vinyl that they're doing now, right? It used to be like,
Yes.
I don't think they did that back in the day, the crazy colors. I think it was like more complicated to do so. But now it's like, everyone's got wacky colors, purple. I think Dirty Honey did a bright yellow one. Yeah, it's cool. So,
Joe, do you think that is the best sounding? Is vinyl like? So you're a vinyl guy. Is that the best sounding version of a song to listen to these days?
I mean, I think like probably scientifically, yes, that is correct. but I don't really know about that sort of thing. Yeah,
You don't
sure.
notice- you don't notice.
My record player is excellent, and I spent a lot of money on a needle and a good deck and a good stylus, and I have very nice speakers and a nice hi-fi. So when I'm playing it like that, absolutely, I'm getting better quality than that whatever basic Spotify are able to stream through my phone than Bluetooth to something else. It's so records. If you really want to turn something up and listen to the incredible detail on a track and really listen to how something's been intended by that artist, I think vinyl is there is something. There is a ritual in putting on a record. And nothing's ever going to replace that or change that. It's, the reason that records are still great and people are still playing records and buying records is the same reason that people are still playing Strats, Telecasters, and Les Pauls. It's that same thing. It's because you can't replace that.
I think it's cool how it's come back around, right? I think it used to be like, okay, now that we're in this streaming world, everyone's like, well, this is kind of boring for all the reasons we just talked about, right? It's like everybody was all excited about streaming for a while. Now everyone's like, this is boring. Like, let's actually get back into this. So I think it's really cool. And I think that means I have to get back into it. And before you know it, in this room here, there's going to be a hi-fi system.
Oh, please do. What a wonderful
really
thing to get back into.
I've been toying with the idea for a long time. Matt can tell you that when I get into something, I get way into it, and my wife will complain to no end. So this is not a road that I really want to go down because it's going to cost me a lot of money. But I might end up having to go down that road.
And you know what's funny, Joe, is we have a friend, actually Dave's college roommate, who's like he works for like a super high end like audio company or like audio installation company, right? And so like it's ridiculous. Like when I was doing this room, I put like a soundbar under my TV, and I emailed him and I said, "Hey, what do you think is a good speaker for this?" And he sent me something that was like $30,000. I was like, no. I was thinking like like a Bose. I don't know. And he used to work for Bose too, so it's really funny. He's like, no, I'm past the Bose stuff. Like you got to go to.
Right.
So like I worry that like if I get into it, I'm going to start calling him, and it's going to be like much more expensive than these amplifiers behind me.
It's so problematic, isn't it? I think if like we're all guitar nerds, and I think that sort of nerdery around guitar gear that extends to anything you get into.
Oh yeah,
which is the problem. It's why I spend loads of money on guitars, loads of money on records, and loads of money on Star Trek memorabilia. And those that's the problem. If I'm really into something, I really get into it. Like earlier today, I was looking at. there was in the late 90s they did a Star Trek Next Generation laser pointer Type 2 phaser, but the Type 2 phaser with the straight handle, not the curved handle. So pre-season 6 of Next Generation, $310, $250 to get it over from the States. And I'm sitting there on eBay being like, it would be cool.
If I
don't need a laser pointer Type 2 phaser.
Well, you don't need it, but this, just like we always talk about, you don't need
It's
it,
fun.
but it would be cool.
It would be cool.
Exactly.
You only live once,
It would be cool.
Gotta-
Yeah, but yeah,
Exactly. Well, unless you're Captain Jean-Luc Picard, then you live twice the second
Oh,
time
that's true,
precariously
yeah.
Right,
through
okay, yes.
an android body.
Yeah.
I think it's so funny, Joe. Like, we're going to hear you talking about this on your podcast next. Like, this is what you've acquired. But Joe, so with Polymath, talk a little bit about Polymath, because you were just out on tour with them. Do you guys do vinyl? Do you guys actually release vinyl as well?
Yeah, actually, I'd
Yeah.
say records are kind of the bulk of our merch sales. I think again because
great.
it's
Oh,
it's
interesting.
prog, because it's weird music. That's how people want to buy it. There's also an element of when you're a small band, people want to support the band, and so
Yeah.
vinyl is a great way to do that. Obviously, we do a CD, but we'll do one record on CD at a time, because realistically, it's only if someone over the age of 55 stumbles into one
Yeah.
of our gigs that they want to buy a CD, or people in France, because apparently
really?
CDs. Yeah,
Oh,
don't know why.
Really?
So
Oh, is
we
that
sell
right?
CDs in France. Yeah, not entirely sure why. A little bit. I mean, I love France. That's one of my favourite countries in Europe, but oddly enough, still haven't quite
They love the CDs.
quite got off the
Well, I love
CD.
the CD.
Where Dave? We were at a show and they had Greg Koch. We were at
Greg Koch,
We
oh,
saw
yeah.
Greg Koch locally around here, and he had CDs in his merch. He does have an older crowd, like he does.
Yeah. Well, that's
Like,
it, isn't it? It's
we were
an
some
age
of the
thing.
younger guys there, but I was thinking, I was like, I'd love to buy this, but I don't think I really have any place to play
Have
this
any?
thing.
Yeah. No, exactly.
I still only have one location I could put. I still do buy CDs occasionally, but I want to. The vinyl thing interests me, but only because I really want to go back to that excitement of like being able to. Oh, this new record's coming out. I'm going to go buy it, or I'm going to order it and wait for it to come, and I'm going to put it on. I'm going to listen to the whole thing start to finish, and that's
What about
something I
my-
rarely do when I stream.
My son has an Xbox. Think I could use the Xbox?
I don't know if they can anymore.
Can they play it? We don't
I think that's
even know.
old tech.
Yeah, it's old tech. That's right.
It is
used to
old
be-
tech. You can-
like I had a
you should-
PlayStation back in the day that you could play audio CDs on that. I
Sure,
don't
maybe
know
the
if you can
first
play
one.
it
Yeah.
on Xbox.
I don't know if you can do that anymore. Wow, that's so funny. Well, got to
do
go to
not
the
know.
got to go to the vinyl. We're going to the vinyl.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
It's the solution.
So that's
It's
funny
the
though about
solution.
France. So France, the French are still only into the CDs.
I mean, the French people that came to our shows, yeah, they were. But like, we played a show. There's Prog Magazine is a big magazine here in the UK for anything. For prog music, surprisingly. But we played a gig for them in London, and it was one of the only shows that we played where I think that there wasn't anyone under 65 there. And it was like an all-dayer. It was like a festival. It's seated, which was very weird for us because we throw
that's
ourselves
odd,
around
yeah.
a lot, and I'm not sure they were prepared for that. But on merch sales, our merch sales afterwards were almost exclusively CDs, and it's so funny to be there with a crowd of people in their 60s and sell loads of CDs, and then
That's
play
funny.
to a crowd of people in their 20s and 30s and sell only records. It's
Yeah,
it's
that-
done this
that is
weird
wild.
overlapping.
How ironic is that? It's so weird.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really crazy. So, Joe, I know you probably you talked about on your own pod, but tell us about, because you just got back from tour. Tell us about what the rig was.
Just
I know
my
you
rig?
I know you agonized over this a lot, but tell us like what the rig was and how it worked out on this last tour.
Just the rig that I took out, just
yeah,
my one.
or the whole band's rig. Yeah,
The
you-
whole-
you-
or the
I know,
whole-
I know your
okay.
guitarist always has an interesting rig too, so we're interested in that. So.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we've been trying to get a little bit more portable, a little bit more lightweight and stuff. Partially
Yeah.
because our van is very old, but also just because we're getting older, and it
Yeah.
would be nice to bring less stuff.
Yeah.
But this time I took out a couple of, so because I work a lot with Ashdown, they let me design some stuff for them. I'm kind of freelance for them, but I get to get involved in whenever we're designing new stuff, and that's always loads of fun. So I took out two of their Neo series, so they're lightweight cabs. They're 112s. So I took two of their 112s so that I could stack them. It's kind of like having a mini 810 rig. So you've got something at ear height, which is nice, but you can also carry both the cabs at once easily. So they're great. 12s sound great for bass. They're so underestimated for bass. Everyone either goes 15s if they want to be trad or 10s if they want to be modern, and no one ever considers 12s. But 12s are a fantastic all-rounder, a really good underrated cabinet. I hope more bass players get behind 12s in the future, because I do think, especially if you want a rock and roll tone, it's a great rock and roll speaker. You don't have the weird tight high endness that I think is very unrock and roll that you get from 10s. And whilst the 15 is still my ultimate cab, I love the sound of 15s. A lot of that is just because that's what Billy Sheehan uses, but 15s sound great, but a 12 is just a brilliant balance of everything. So
that's great.
Took two of those. And then I took an Ashdown original 500 head, which is just a Class D head with 5-band EQ on it, input output. Clean 500 watts of headroom. And the idea is the rig is just crystal clean, and then everything is coming off the board. So I have a Sansamp VT bass DI at the end of my chain. So I'm essentially making the Ashdown sound as close to an SVT stack as I can off of the board. Yeah. But it's just to give it that grit. So even on clean, when I'm on a clean setting, I've still got that little edge of breakup, that little sort of rock and roll you dig in, especially when you play with a plectrum. You've got that drive tone coming through. And I always use the VT one, not the normal Sansamp, because whilst the Sansamp bass DI is still the most popular bass DI and preamp for bass players, there's no mids. It's just bass and treble, and then a presence control. And the thing I want to boost, because I want to sound rock and roll, is that mids control. I want those mids to be a little bit cocked. Exactly. And it's an underestimated thing for bass players. Bass players always leave mids flat or they scoop them. Now, I think they underestimate the fact that actually, if you choose that frequency to push, you cut through the mix better.
Yes.
It's a great, fun, proper rock and roll sound, and you get to sound like you sound like all those old rock and roll records. You dig in with fingers, or you play with a plectrum with a precision or a jazz with your mids cocked a little bit, and it's just the sound of the 70s.
Now, you don't play with a plectrum, do you, Joe? I've never seen you play with, or you do?
Very rarely. I'm getting really into it, and I would like to do it more in the future, but I'm not very good with the plectrum. I don't even play guitar with a plectrum. But
you don't?
But there's a couple.
I don't know if I knew that about you. Oh, interesting.
I know ridiculously, because I get lots of pick companies to send me things. Like I've got like these Huffschmid picks. Obviously, dear listener, you won't be able to see these, but these are.
Jeez. How many millimeters is that thing?
I have no idea. Far too many is the answer. Yeah, and I've got these lovely honey picks. I think they're actually fantastic.
We love honey picks.
Oh, honey picks are so good.
I got them right.
They're
I got
so
one right here.
gorgeous.
I love them. I know.
Yeah, they're the best. Honey picks, dear listener, are the best. If you are thinking about changing your plectrum and you don't, there's a honey picks hat over there.
Oh yeah,
Dave. I didn't even see that.
Wear it every week. Yeah,
Dave we love honey picks. Those guys are great. Yeah.
They're the best, and if I could use plectrums properly, I would play honey picks, but I can't, so I don't.
I'll tell you what, though, like I've been. This is on my desk because I use it quite a bit, but it's really hard for me to get away from my Tortex. I don't know why. It's like it's just so ingrained in my life. I don't know, and I always pick this up, but then
trying to work on them.
But I'll tell you what, for like I'm not a shredder guitar player. But when I want to do like more shreddy stuff, actually, you can see behind. You probably can't see that well. My Charvel, there's a honey pick stuck in the Charvel string for that reason, because I feel like with that type of playing, you want something like a little more beefy.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Yeah, Eddie Van Halen used the metal, so you need something. Really stiff.
I think I've got some of those actually. Huffschmid did some weird brass plectrums that I've got somewhere knocking around. But
look at that. You got all these plectrums, you don't even use them.
I know. I can basically, if I use a plectrum, I can't pick. I find I've never really.
Well,
I guess being a bass player.
Yeah, as a bassist, you just you're used to the fingers, which is the way I think is the right way to do it. I have some bass player friends that are just like they see anybody with the pick and they just like turn their nose up, and I'm like, really? But you don't feel that way.
But it's the reason that I really like fingerstyle is for dynamics. I feel the same about guitar as I do bass. I don't feel you get any real dynamics with a plectrum. Not a lot. I mean, you get like wonderful definition, and that's brilliant. And for 90% of music, that's probably almost definitely what you want. But I really like, especially when playing guitar, to set an amp gainier than you would expect, and then try and play under the gain.
Yes.
You try and I really love. I've got this high watt custom shop filter fuzz. It's absolutely massive. It's like the size of your arm. It's the biggest pedal I own, and it's an incredible fuzz pedal. But you can turn the fuzz up a fair bit and then try and just play softly, and it will let through some clean signal with just a little bit of edge of breakup in there, and it works almost like a champ or something if you were trying to play a Fender champ softly. And I love that. I think that's great because it still means you can dig in, you can still get that tone, but you can hold back and really try and make the most of the silence. I think it's...
This is interesting. I'm going off on a little bit of tangent. Do you use the guitar volume or the bass volume, as it were? Like on the bass? Okay, you don't. So you do it with your fingers. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Because I don't much either.
Right.
And then you hear.
I've always found it amazing that people do, but
you hear guys like Joe Bonamassa that talk about like these knobs are here for a reason, guys. Like he says stuff like that, and it's like. Yeah, Joe, but not everybody can play an amp on stage cranked to like gazillion decibels, because to be honest, that's when those dynamics come out the most, is if you really have crank amp. Yeah. So all of us without the luxury of doing, although you guys play pretty loud, right, Joe?
Yeah, we're definitely Polymath, a kind of an amps band. We like playing very loudly and being told off for it. It's it's good.
You're like the bane of the existence of the sound guys that you deal with. Turn it down.
Yeah, exactly. It's why we try and bring sound engineers with us, to be honest, because
that's smart.
Otherwise, people try and get us to turn down, and it's pious. Come on,
it's
guys. It's rock and roll.
Yeah, it's a buzzkill, man. But you used to bring like a monster Ashdown rig, right? Like, didn't you used to bring like a 4x, well, not a 4x, like an 8x10 or something crazy like that?
No, it was so for context, I'm using those two 112s now.
Yeah.
My guitarist is using the Jazz Chorus 40, so that's a 210 Jazz Chorus.
Oh, okay. Yep.
The one of the original Polymath rigs he had an orange OR30 and a hovercraft Dwarvenaut 20. He had those two heads, and then he had a 412 and a 212. I had Ashdown.
Wow. Oh my god!
Yeah, and I had Ashdown make me two 115 cabinets, but I had them in their 410 chassis, and then I had them cotton wool lined, so the same as like John Paul Jones's, or even same as Billy Sheehan's high watt AKs, where he had them cotton wool lined. So filled with cotton wool, but just 115 in a massive 410 chassis, and they were made out of the thick marine ply, so they were 2-man lift 115s each, and I used to have those side by side with a big 300 watt valve heads, the Ashdown CTM 300, which is Ashdown absolutely copying an SVT classic.
Yeah, but that's basically. So you've come
until you guys started breaking your arms, and then
So your guitarist. So your guitarist went away from the katanas. He was using katanas for a while, right?
Yeah, that was our first attempt to be lightweight, and he moved to, because he was still doing dual amp at the time. So he had one amp that was his main amp, and his second amp he'd have always run through an octave down, normally a Digitech drop, and that he'd turn on and off with an ABY pedal, sort of on and off alongside the other amp. And we moved to katanas because they were lightweight and because they were reliable, and because he's rubbish at maintaining amps, and we were getting so much like, you play a rubbish venue where the lighting rig's on the same circuit as the power, and all of a sudden his valve amps were making a lot of noise. So the katanas were a way to minimize that.
Yeah.
But the only downside of the katanas were they didn't tour well. You know, they're quite thin wood. And and you know, they're getting knocked around, thrown in the back of vans and gigs sort of night after night. That they were starting to show signs of falling apart. That's almost not a criticism of the katana. It is a $300 amplifier for beginners.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing that he was actually able to bring them on a legitimate tour and get the sounds he wanted, and it sounded good to everybody. I mean, says a lot about, you know, what I would consider a practice amp for all intents and purposes. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, it's the clean. You know, they're 100 watts, class AB. Sorry, that you know they're you know, it's solid state, 100 watts. If you just want a clean amplifier, actually, I'd find it difficult to argue against the katana, because then all you really need is something on the floor, a good drive pedal.
Right, that's right.
To create your tone, and who's not using like a pedal on the floor that's supposed to be a Dumble, supposed to be a Marshall, supposed to be, you know, something that's like that. So as long as you've got something that's doing a good job of that on the floor.
Yeah, you're pretty.
I had a Katana 50 a while back, and the reason I gave it, I sold it, was because I wanted something like as a pedal platform, but I wasn't using it for anything else, and I said this thing is really kind of a waste for me, and I was really more like a tube guy anyway, and so I sold it because for that reason. Like I wasn't using any of the effects on it.
Right.
I was solely using it as a pedal platform, and I just felt like it was kind of a waste for me to have. It was it had great clean tones. It was a good pedal platform, but otherwise I felt like it had its limitations.
Sure, exactly. If you want the amp to do something other than provide volume, then I don't know if it's the best solution. But if all you're looking for is some volume, then it's a great amplifier.
That's exactly.
So he's gone.
But,
but he's gone to the JCs, huh? So that, I mean, talk about a good clean platform. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah. It's the new stuff that we've been writing. Well, the stuff we've been writing for about the last year is we've sort of taken the gloves off with accepting that we just wish we were King Crimson in the late 70s, and so the new stuff is just, there are a couple of tracks where we're like, this is actually a King Crimson riff. Oh well, no one who listens to us is going to know, so it's fine.
You know, my dad looks like Robert Fripp.
Wow.
You probably don't see resemblance if you look at me. I look more like my mom, but he does. Like, it's really funny.
He looks like Fripp. Wow.
When I started getting into guitar, I remember I had this book that was like teaching you how to play guitar, and it was like Robert Fripp. I'm like, my dad's on this book.
Did it teach you new standard tuning? Did it teach you new standard tuning?
He didn't teach me anything. Well, I guess no. Maybe back in the day when maybe I did get into that at some point with the Fripp stuff. Yeah. But what an
that's what we're in. But so you tune.
Oh, that's
tune
what
to
you're
fifths.
doing. Okay,
yeah, tune to fifths. But he around that time, around the time that King Crimson were great, so albums like Red, around then Fripp was using a jazz chorus, and so I think Tim, for that reason, was like, I think I want a jazz chorus. But we tried getting the 120, and the thing is that
what was that?
Bossa like
120? Yeah.
Well, Roland Bossa like, this amp's unchanged since 1976. Yeah, they didn't have PAs in 1976.
Yeah,
so
good point.
Trying to get the amplifier above 1 is impossible. So it just not very usable by today's standards. But the 40 is very loud. He probably only plays that on 3 or 4.
Yeah,
and think about that. That's a tiny 210 amp that you can pick up with what you could take that on the train, and it's great. So loud that you don't need most of it.
Yeah, and it's not super super heavy either, which is great, right? So, because I always feel that way about the hot rod, right? Dave, you got a hot rod, the Fender hot rod, but they're heavy, like they're loud.
They're heavy. You can't turn it up past 2 if you want to maintain your hearing.
Like you would shake the guitars off the wall.
Fender have got this far into their sort of their time as a business and not been able to work out how to create a volume control is incredible.
I know, right?
Yes.
Like why? Like
it really is true.
Because master volumes, like I like Friedman amps. I don't actually own one. Maybe that has to change. But like they have these amazing master volumes on them, right? You can play 100-watt fire breathing Friedman amp like in your bedroom because the master volume's so good, and it's like why haven't they figured that out?
I'll
But
tell you
this
that.
is it.
The
This
hot
is
rod,
companies like. Oh, sorry. Go on.
no, go ahead.
Go ahead, Joe. Yeah.
I was going to say, companies like Amplified Nation and Two Rock, who I know you guys have spoken about a bunch in the
I got
past.
an
That's
Amplified Nation behind me here. Yeah, I love it.
That's why they're doing so well, because
Yeah.
they can make all of that stuff, all of that
Yeah.
great classic tone, but they can also actually make it kind of usable. I'm not saying that they make bedroom-friendly amplifiers; they just make amplifiers that work a bit more properly.
That's right, and it is
Right,
true.
yeah.
Like for the Friedman and for the Amplified, yes, the master volume works great, but it's going to sound a little bit better if you turn it up to 1 or 2.
Of course,
right?
yeah.
Like if you're under 1, it's not going to sound. You're not going to have the amp.
No,
sound, but
no.
but you can do it and get a sound, right? Whereas like
Yeah.
Fender, you just can't do that.
You just can't do it.
No.
Yeah, it's so
No,
funny.
I need to be 2 or 3 rooms away if I want to crank up the hot rod that sounds anything good, anything worth playing. And it's fun and it sounds great, but then if I walk anywhere near it, I get my head blown off.
I think
So
that
it's just-
that pedal
yeah.
show, the guys they tried to see how loud a hot rod had to be before it started to do natural breakup, and it was like insanely, it was like as loud as they've ever played, they said, or something. And
Yeah.
So,
They're not.
I mean,
they're
there
not
are
the
ways to
product for that.
to dial in, to kind of tame the beast a little bit, but they're just loud amps. They just are what they are.
well, you do that. It does have an
which
effects
is
loop.
most
so
Defender.
you do the effects loop trick. Yeah, you do that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
of course.
they
Pop
did.
an attenuator in the effects
Yeah.
loop. Yeah,
Pop that.
that's
in.
the solution.
But what about? So you talk a little bit about your pedals, Joe. Talk a little. I'm interested. Like what does Joe bring on tour?
My pedal board has actually been pretty slimmed down over the. I mean, I apologise to listeners. Obviously, I'm going to be talking about a bass board here, so it's
Well, you know what? We
never
had
as
some
fun.
listeners say, maybe because we had some listeners come, that people that are in a lot of the same groups that we're in on Facebook, they said like it'd be interesting to talk about a little bit of bass on your pod, and we're
Yeah,
like, well,
well.
we're not bassists, so I don't know, we can't help you, but this is what you're here for, Joe.
But now we
Oh,
can.
there you go. That's what I'll do now. So okay, so pedal board wise, I've been using the as the board itself. I've been using the Boss BCB 1000X,
Yeah.
which is their insanely overpriced pedal board, but Matt Knight gave it to me, so I don't mind. But it's way
I
way
remember you're
more
talking-
money than it's worth.
I remember you talking about that. That thing is funny. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
It's great because it's
Yeah.
got like it works like a suitcase, dear listener. So
Yeah.
you've got like a handle that comes out. It's got wheels, so you can. Oh, it's lovely. It's like
Hey,
a
I don't
like
know
a
when
little.
it had wheels. Oh, that's even better.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great. But it's only a small board. It's like an 8 pedal board, something like that.
Oh, okay.
So not a great sight. I've definitely, since moving to it, found myself picking between things, and I don't really think I want to do that moving forward. So I am going to change back to a bigger
go back
board.
to
But
the
it was
bigger.
lovely whilst I had it. So on this last tour, I went, of course, trusty. Every single board I've had since the pedal came out. The brains of it is the Boss MS3, because the MS3 has great effects, because Boss effects, even when they're digital and simple, are very good, especially when
Wow.
you're a bass player. I appreciate that, and I actually probably will move back to a Helix at some point in the future. I appreciate that Line 6 make the most creative effects at this sort of point, but if you're a bass player, generally speaking, the effects you want, you need to be pretty straight up. If you want a drive, you want it to be a drive. If you want a vibrato, it just needs to be a vibrato.
Yeah.
If you happen to be using a slapback delay, you just want a slapback delay. You don't need any of the other stuff, because it's an ensemble instrument. You're providing the more supportive role. So effects need to be less creative. And Boss make bad creative effects, but great functional fundamental
Yeah.
effects. So that's the MS3 is great for that. But then I have the SVT, the VT, the Sansamp VT DI at the end of my chain. That's my amp voicing. And then my always on drive pedal is the new Ashdown Triple Shot, which I was very lucky to get help
Oh yeah.
to help design. So I thought that was great. Well, design. R&D. I told them when something sounded rubbish and when something sounded good. So I shouldn't
That's
say
design.
I just yeah.
That counts.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Sure.
But
yeah.
it's a great pedal for bass players, because it's like you get 3 bands of EQ, and then you get 3 gains, and there's a gain for each EQ band. So I can
Interesting.
clean up my low end,
Very cool.
and I can drive my mids, which is kind of what I want to do. And if you were in a metal band, you might want to completely remove your mids and drive your treble loads.
Yep.
And so it's very versatile. It does a lot, but I really like it for just, that's my always on. That's the sound that I have, is that pedal. And then I guess I'm using like the real cornerstone of my pedal board is the Thorpe Effects Fat General, which is their compressor.
Oh, okay.
It's a gorgeous compressor because I love the Boss CS2. It's the best compressor that's ever been made for bass because it's so ridiculously over the top.
Yeah.
It's so it makes that weird sucking sound. I just love it. It's like a pure sort of 80s overly compressed. It's not doing the job properly, but it's become its own effect in its own way. I love it for that. The problem with the CS2 is noise floor, and somehow the Fat General by Thorpe Effects is exactly the same thing with no noise floor, with a very reduced one. So
that's great.
That is very good. That's the cornerstone. And then, but to be honest, most of the other stuff is I'm using a lot of the built-in effects. Other than that, like the VB2 off of the MS3 is very good. Like some light slapback delay.
Yep.
And the only real other essential is the just a really simple MXR Phase 90.
Okay, all right.
Just
Why
run
not?
really slowly, because I find if you're picking away at like just a root line and you want a little bit of movement, a really slow phaser is great. In fact, for years I've had that, and it's always been great. And the only thing that's gonna make me swap is actually this. You can only see this if you're watching. Is Orange have made a version of the Phase 90. It sounds great. I think it sounds slightly better, but it's if you've got Phase 90, it's fine. More importantly, it's just in a massive retro box,
It's
and I'm a big
huge.
fan of an oversized pedal. So
That is a giant
So this is
pedal.
yeah, this is far too big for what it's doing.
I think
I love
the
it.
bigger the pedal, the bigger the sound. You know,
why
That is
not?
exactly
that
right.
psychological kind of.
Well, exactly. This is bigger because you can fit more sound into it. If it was smaller, it works the same as cabinets, really. In that way.
That's exactly right. Joe, do you use the MS3? Can you also do switching? I say this because someone that just got an ES5. Can you also?
Boy, here we go.
Can you
I
also
figured
do
how
switching in the MS3, or does it? It does that too, right? You can have effects.
Sorry, Dave.
You can have effects loops go into it. And
had
stuff
to get
like
to
that?
the switcher.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. So you can have 3. So I do have 3 things plumbed in there. So I have the drive is plumbed in there because I do occasionally turn it off for when I need like a clean modulation sound. So
Okay.
So that's really great. Like the MS3 is so versatile because yes, you can have up to 3 effects plumbed in that you can then turn on and off with single switches, but also the fact that you can add the internal effects.
Yeah, it's cool.
And it's so ingenious. You can do like double. So I've got my 4 switches laid out in front of me. I move around a lot on stage, so I don't want the buttons to be too close together, and I don't want to do a lot of channel hopping. I don't want to be flicking between different sets of 4 effects too much in case I get lost where I am. So what's lovely is on each patch you can actually you can make the patch activate something separate on a second switch of the pedal.
Yeah.
So for the 4 switches in front of me, I can have 1 be my clean. If I tap 1 again, it can add an octave. I can have 2 be my drive. If I tap 2 again, it can add a phaser to the drive, and little things like that. So you always get, each patch has a second boost function to it, whatever that may be, depending on the patch. I just find that very usable.
That is really
the thing that
cool.
That's
exactly.
cool,
It's great. And the thing that the Boss MS3 has for me over the Line 6 stuff, and I don't want to, I'm probably, my new board, I'm going to get rid of the MS3, and I am going to go back to Helix because I do think the sounds are so good.
They are
the
good.
reason that I love Boss stuff so much, and the MS3 and the ES series so much, is that they've put the buttons far enough away that if you are on a stage and actually playing, you can press them.
And Helix is tough.
The HX is tough. Helix you can, and LT you can.
Yep.
I would say that the HX Stomp XL is unusable. Like
Yep.
those four
Yep.
buttons are
Yep.
so close together; they are the size of a foot.
Yep.
All four of them together. I can't do that live. I can't press those separately. I can't guarantee I'll hit the right one.
Yep.
And so
I
it's
totally
not a
agree.
usable product.
So I use.
But it's not just Line 6. The GT1000 by Boss, I would say, has done the same thing. All the buttons are so close together. I'm like, well, this isn't a product for use outside of a bedroom, which I don't think it actually is probably intended for use outside of a bedroom, but it's no use to me because of it.
I think
yeah,
it's
no,
a great point.
it's an interesting point because as a new Stomp owner, I just bought an HX Stomp a few weeks ago, and I've been tooling around with it. Now listeners to the pod know I don't gig, so it's a perfect thing for me in the basement. But I did kind of notice that myself, like you reach out for something and you're almost like you're hitting a few different switches at the same time, or if
Joe,
you're not like right on top of it,
Joe, Dave has the ungiggable rig.
I totally have.
He should get
totally
together
do.
with Matt. We should get Matt on, and
yeah.
Matt and Dave can talk about the ungiggable rigs that they have.
Yeah, well, this thing was designed by Philip Carter, so I have to.
Yeah, that's what it is. Well, I wanted to bring that up because my band is the antithesis of your band, Joe, where it's the quiet stage thing, but it's like a cover. It's a covers. You say covers. We say cover band. It's a
covers band. Yeah, that's
what do you say? Covers? You say covers band, right?
Covers.
We say cover band.
Yeah, maybe covers band. Yeah,
covers
band.
Yeah.
Okay.
We say cover band. Anyway.
Well, yeah, it's like when you guys miss the L out in solder. That always gets me.
Yeah, solder. Yeah, that's right. You're right about that. So anyway, so because I have the HX, so I have this thing where I'm using the Victory preamp, the Victory Sheriff preamp into my HX Stomp.
Brilliant.
And that's my dirty sound. And then I just use the models in the Stomp for the clean sounds. And then I have like regular pedals as well. But so I got the ES5 to be able to make this easier. But you're exactly right what you're saying about the HX, because I've found myself like literally just using the MIDI with the ES5 to just switch my Stomp to different patches. Right. And I'm realizing I can actually switch a patch now because I don't have to like tap dance over 3 pedals, and do all this stuff. So you're right. Like, so actually, cause I'm in a few different HX Stomp groups, what you see with people doing live is they either have some kind of MIDI controller or they add the just external regular switches to the HX Stomp to make it usable live, because like I've literally only used 2 patches on my HX Stomp live up until now. Now that I bought this ES5, I will use like 3 or 4 patches. So
now it's usable. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Line 6 make the best brains and not the best control. I mean, they do. If you buy Helix and you buy LT, they do, but they don't on the smaller things. How have you guys found the update? Whatever it is.
I haven't done it yet, Joe. I haven't, Dave.
Oh,
so I know.
I did it today.
I've been busy.
Very good.
It's been a busy week for me. Yeah, we gotta get that done. That's definitely something I'm going to be doing over the weekend. Up to 3.70, is it? There's some cool stuff I hear.
It's 3.7.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's they've obviously been they've been letting Ben Adrian run wild on the amp models. So there are no official like branded ones on this thing. There are no like this is an Ampeg, this is a Fender. They're all like Line 6, and then
ones.
a name, Aristocrat and stuff like that. But then they're like, oh no, this is inspired by this thing, but they're obviously just not going after the official licensing for any of it. But yeah, great. Like a bunch of amps, maybe 6, 8 new amps, a bunch of new cabs.
Oh, wow.
They sounded great. The Aristocrat is the only one, the name I can remember, but it was extremely good. Some great modern stuff, some great vintage stuff, some really gorgeous, like boxy, old school stuff.
Oh, man.
A couple of great bass things. They've done like a Noble's preamp. They've modeled that. They've done the Noble... one of their drives, the yellow drive that Noble did, which sounds great, really thick, lovely, proper Nashville drive sound.
Awesome. Yeah.
Great. They've done a couple of delays on there as well, a couple of new delay models.
Oh, nice.
Just more brilliant stuff. It's the best thing about Line 6 Helix is it just seems to be every now and again it's like, oh, I just got 10 new free things today.
You know what I heard?
more option paralysis for Dave. That's
So-
that's why I was so hesitant to get one, because
Exactly,
I already have a hard enough time like getting myself determined to practice. I come down and I start to dial things in, and before you know it, like an hour's gone by, and oh well, I guess I didn't practice that much. I just dialed in tone.
Is it
Yeah.
Joe? Is
So
it true? Is it true that they put a like the equivalent of a Digitech freak out into the Helix now, into the Stomp and the Helix?
Are you talking about? Is that the feedbacker?
It's like the feedbacker, yeah.
Yeah.
So I
they
almost
have.
bought a
It sounds
Digitech.
great.
I almost bought a Digitech freakout because I really miss, playing live and getting actual feedback from an amp when you go direct, right? And you're all in ears. You don't get it, right?
Yeah.
So okay, I'll have to check that out.
So it's very good. I tried it today on Helix Native, just plugged into my DAW and picked up a Telecaster and tried it out. And it's fantastic, but you've got to do... you have to be careful how you use the feedbacker, because, of course, what it actually is an octave with some reverb on it,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
that's swelling in.
okay.
That's actually what's, like, technically,
That's under
that's
the
what's
hood.
happening.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But they do a very good job of it. It's just what a feedback is designed for is to you to hit a chord
Yeah.
and then for that feedback to swell in.
That's right.
Try not to move a note whilst it's doing that, because you'll hear the feedback pitch up with your note.
Ooh,
Like, as in it will move, it will sort of boop
yeah.
with your,
So, which you
with your
don't
note.
want.
So
That'll ruin the
you
effect.
don't want that, because
at
it's
all, no.
it's clearly not what it's supposed to be at that point. So
Right.
it sounds great as long as all you're doing is holding a chord and letting it
Holding
ring
a
out.
chord.
Then
That's
it's
all.
fine.
That's what I
Yeah,
want to do
yeah.
at the end of a song
Yeah.
when we're rocking. I want to hear the.
You want it, put it on an unlatched, like, I think that's the way to use it. Have it on an unlatched switch. Just press down the pedal and have it go, and then
Oh,
be able to
yeah.
lift off. And
Oh, that's a great idea.
because
All right.
it does
Yeah,
tails
they-
as well,
there
so
you
I
go.
think you can.
Oh, it does tails as well. Oh man.
Yeah.
Okay,
very
I got to get into this. So, but Joe, you think you? So when you say you're going to go Helix, do you think that means like you do the whole rig Helix, or just no, or no?
I don't know. I think I'd probably use the HX effects. I keep
Okay,
thinking about
yeah,
buying one.
That's because you're not going to get rid of your amp.
No.
Yeah.
No, exactly. And so I've got an LT, but I've lent my LT to a friend who lives quite a way away.
Oh, okay.
And whenever I try and message her and be like, hey, do you think maybe I could get that pedal back sometime? She's always like, oh, yeah, sure, no problem. And then, I don't hear from her for a while. So
never see it again.
You'll never get that. You'll
Yeah.
never see
I
No,
that.
lent
exactly.
Dave a guitar once, and that almost happened. But then he was obsessed with buying his own, so I got it back because he bought his own. So
That's
what
right.
happened. That was what was that,
okay.
Dave? The tribute? That was the Les Paul
That was that was
60s
Les Paul tribute. Yeah.
60s tribute.
I needed the P90s in my life. Who
P90s.
knew?
Yeah, nice guitar.
everyone needs P90s in their life.
Affordable
Everybody needs
American-made
P90s in their life.
Gibson, right? I
Yeah.
would say,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I love. Affordable American.
It's one of my
Yeah.
favorite
Gibsons.
guitars.
Well, what do we think, Dave?
That's it.
What do
That's
we
what
Which
everyone
actually,
wants.
so that brings me to actually, it's a good segue, because I wanted to get to our listener question of the week.
Oh, geez.
That came out of our Facebook group. This is a perfect question for Joe.
It is a question for Joe.
So it's a great question for Joe. So I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Eric Gudgel. So anyway, in our Facebook group, he asks, here's a question I've been pondering. Does a guitar become more collectible, valuable if it gets reissued later? Example, I've got an oddball 2003 Fender Stratosonic, which was made in the USA, strap body take on Les Paul Jr. Special. They don't seem to be all that collectible or even well known. They've only made them for 2 years. But now that Squier has re-released them as a paranormal version, does that make the originals more collectible? Interesting question. What do you think, Joe?
I think it's kind of guitar specific. It has to be something that
It
people
is, yeah.
care about.
Yeah.
And that's so niche. I mean, it could well be the case. I think it probably is. The thing is that the pre-owned market at the moment, I don't know what it's like for you guys the other side of the pond from me, but the pre-owned market's crazy at the moment. It's basically the same as buying new at the moment.
Okay,
there's
so that's interesting you say that. We're in this like post-COVID glut where the prices have
Yeah.
gone way down. So it's actually
Right.
it's a good time in the States right now to buy used gear. Now not everything, but like Dave and
Not
I
everything.
Dave and I have been talking about this for weeks. Like you see Les Pauls out there for like well less than $2,000, which is like unheard of, unless it's like a one of these lower price ones, like proper Les Paul standards. You
Right.
see people listing them for less than 2,000. It's like when did
Yeah.
this happen?
Yeah.
Because I was looking for a guitar like 5-6 years ago, and you didn't. That was unheard of, right? So it's really softened up here in the States. I think people are starting to sell all that stuff they bought over the pandemic, and maybe you'll see that in the UK. I think with the UK, like
I hope so.
things get expensive, but there's a lot of guitars over there in the UK, so you think it would start to come down too. Anyway,
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great.
But
the I mean, with this, I do think potentially, yeah. I mean, look, we've seen examples of it, haven't we? The I guess things like the Tom DeLonge.
yeah.
It really depends, I guess, on the price of the reissue, because the original Tom DeLonge Stratocaster was 600 quid in a guitar shop in 2003, and they have released exactly the same thing 20 years on. Like, there's no premium features here. It's the same model.
It's the same thing.
With same woods, probably worse woods than
Yeah,
Fender were using back then, and it's 1,300 quid. I mean, I don't know what it is in dollars. Actually, I don't know if it's.
I think this is one of Tom DeLonge. Is that a made in Mexico one? I think it is.
It's made in Mexico.
Yeah, I think it's like
it's made in Mexico.
1,300. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but 1,300 quid means around 15, 16 for us.
15,
right?
$1,600.
Yeah,
Yeah.
1,600 USDs, as we say.
Yeah. And you think that because Fender have done that, now an original Tom DeLonge can go for whatever you want it to, because
That's right.
people will assign that 20 years of it being a guitar, and everyone knows that Fender were making better guitars 20 years ago, so there's that comes into play as well. So I don't know, I guess something with a Stratosonic, who cares about that guitar? Almost, so much. I'm not saying it's a bad guitar. I'm saying who cares?
Yeah,
it's not a big seller, so it's
an oddball guitar, and Eric says it himself. But I think there is that certain psychology that if something comes back into play, it automatically tags itself as more important. And I think that adds value to something. And in the it depends on who you are and whether you understand gear and value and those kinds of things. But there's going to be, there's buyers out there who will look at some of these things and say that it is more valuable simply because something is more valuable simply because it's been reissued.
So the biggest example I can think of is and this drives me crazy, is the damn Silver Burst Les Paul Custom that was reissued recently because of the Tool guy. Oh, geez. Now you think I would remember the Tool guy's name.
Yeah.
Tell us, Joe.
You're talking Adam Jones.
Adam Jones,
yep.
thank you.
Adam Jones.
So the Adam Jones, they reissued this Silver Burst because he had like a late 70s Silver Burst Les Paul. And now you can't get a Silver Burst Custom, especially a 70s one, for anything reasonable. It used to be you could see them like well under 5K, maybe in the 3 range. Now they're up for 7, 8, 9, 10K. It's completely nuts.
Yeah.
So Eric, that's an example where it's happened, but that's a very, like Joe said, that's a very specific guitar. So I think like Silver Burst is one of those things that I think people forgot about, and then the Adam Jones thing came up, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, these are really cool."
Yeah, I was speaking to Paul Smith, the guy who owns vintage guitars.
Yeah.
And they do. We were talking about this. They do a Silverburst V1000 or whatever it is. Their Les Paul essentially.
Okay.
And he was saying that they can't keep those in stock because they're probably one of the few companies that make a Silverburst Les Paul copy, and it's 400, 500 quid.
Really?
And so it's that the repopularization of Silverburst has transcended brands now. I think that's an exception.
It is like Silver, and I remember like
it is unbelievable.
I remember like before that Adam Jones came up, I was in the Guitar Center. You're so lucky you don't have Guitar Centers, Joe. Actually, I do. We have pretty good luck.
Yeah.
But I remember I was in a Guitar Center and they had one. It wasn't like an old one, but it was like, just a recent Les Paul custom silver burst that was just looked really beautiful. And it was like they wanted like 3,500 for it. And I was looking at it and I was like, that's a little bit more money than I want to spend. It's like, it's unbelievable. Now it's like, forget it. Like even just the recent customs before that happened are like 5,000 now, It's like, this is insane.
With the range of guitars that really gets me for that sort of thing, like becoming important later on, is anything by Gibson made in 2013. When I was working in GAC in the guitar shop in Brighton, and they all that stuff went in 2013. It was a real. No one really cared about Gibson, certainly in the UK. Fender were very much on top.
Okay.
Gibson was sort of limping on a little bit. And Gibson used that time to try new things, especially in the bass world. And sorry, again, I'll talk about bass stuff, but they reissued the G3. They introduced a new shape they introduced an EB bass in a different shape, which was kind of almost a P bass style thing with a couple of Thunderbird pickups. In the guitar world, they introduced their satin finished SGs for the first time, and they were like American made Gibsons in a finish that's going to wear with you really quickly, and they were £600.
Unbelievable.
Which was incredible. And at the time, we were just like, here's Gibson doing some affordable stuff, whatever. They did the Chris Novoselic RD bass at that time for $799 with a hard case.
Oh my God!
With a hard case for $799, and we just were like, that's fine. And now find a Chris Novoselic RD for less than 2,000, and it's the same with all of those things. All of those instruments are going for at least double now, because now we look back on them and look at what Gibson are offering us today, and we go, oh yeah, those were the good old days, weren't they?
Yeah. They really were. And but I don't know. I mean, I think we have to wrap up. We have to wrap up the main episode here, but maybe we continue it. Like I think, Joe, I think we've really seen. I mean, obviously the pandemic had this massive, increase in people getting into guitar and everything. I mean, do you think, tell us quickly, then we can wrap. I think all this guitar media, obviously YouTube blew up over the last, 10 years. You guys are one of the first podcasts to come on the scene. Now you got these, interlopers like Guitar Dads coming in, right? The pedal renaissance that's happened. I think all this stuff has just really made people increase in all this gear has just increased in popularity. The vintage market's out of control. What do you think as someone that's been involved in this from the beginning? Do you see that?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
But I saw that. But I do think we're at bubble bursting point at the moment. Certainly, that's what a lot of brands are saying to me at the moment. That that we are. People have been saying we're going to get to, especially effects pedal saturation point. People have been saying that we'll be there for the last 15 years, but it does feel like maybe we are getting pretty close to that point.
Okay.
Certainly, I think, it's people bought a lot of stuff in the pandemic, and brands reacted to that by starting to make stuff more quickly and release more things. I don't think people have the money right now to continue doing that. And the problem is with companies like Reverb, it's so easy to buy secondhand stuff. And so I think a lot of companies are going to see, there's going to be, the next few years are going to be interesting, but I think we'll see a reduction in a lot of stuff. I think we'll see a lot of the smaller companies go under, and I think we'll see people go back to basics a little bit more with all this stuff. Certainly, there's just no need for us to have the amount of gear we do.
Yeah,
we just
point. Well, we
really got into it.
We were talking, we were hanging out with a pedal builder, Alex from Copper Sounds. Shout out to Copper Sound Pedal. And we were talking about that. Pedals. We're we basically having a similar conversation, but is this, it seems like the demand for pedals is unlimited, right? And he's and he was kind of saying similar things but we have to be very careful about exactly what we're doing, and if we're offering the right product that we know the demand is going to be there. So it's an interesting
thing. Even speaking to like people like Lee Anderton and stuff
Yeah.
from Anderton's, they're saying that that they sell so much stuff, but they almost need the stuff to be new. There's very little point in them holding stock of anything that's been out for more than half a year, because the next thing comes along and people will want that next thing.
Yeah.
So the way
want the next
retailers are
thing,
purchasing
right.
is changing. They need to just buy small quantities of the latest thing. So maybe, pedal brands, guitar brands, amp brands, all gear brands need to it might make sense for people to adjust to making limited runs in short succession in order to keep people interested, just because of how much people are buying and selling.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Joe. Yeah.
Well, it's an interesting topic and an interesting discussion. We'd love to. We're gonna try to bring this over to Patreon.
Only if Joe has time.
So we're gonna, if Joe has time. Joe, do you have time to stick around for Patreon?
Of course, I got time.
He's got time
only
for the
do
Patreon.
another 2
This
hours
is all I
on
do.
Patreon,
This is all I do.
Oh, this is all you do? You just listed all these other companies you work for. Okay, anyway.
Yeah, true.
Anyway, well, thank you guys for thank you to our loyal listeners that listen every week. And if you're new to us and you joined us for the first time, please come back. We hope we bring you some more interesting content next week. Stay tuned, because we do have a big announcement coming next week, and we will let you know what that is at the time. And you can go find us at Guitar Dads Podcast on Facebook. Come join the group. Find us on Instagram as well, where you can see clips of the show. And of course, go over to patreon.com/Guitar Dads Podcast and help support the show if you so choose. And listen, if you're just, I'm sure that most people listening to this are not living under a rock, but Joe, let everybody know about the Guitar Nerds and where they can find you and all that stuff.
Oh, that's very kind of you, Dave. If you do want to check out our podcast, dear listener, then you can. It's Guitar Nerds. You can find it anywhere that you get your podcasts. Join the Guitar Nerds group on Facebook. It's where we where we have all our discussion. Same as you guys, patreon.com/Guitar Nerds. But if you do join the Facebook at the moment, we are designing a guitar with vintage guitars.
Yes.
It's a listener-built guitar.
Yes, this is very cool.
So there is still time to choose things.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about this on
I was
Patreon,
hoping you were going to bring that up. Yeah,
It's-
so plug that. Go check out the group.
It's going badly.
And if you're into like prog rock, math rock, whatever you guys call it, right, Joe? Polymath is your band.
Polymath
Yeah.
is the
So check
name
out
of the band,
Polymath
yeah.
as well. So, Joe, we really can't thank you enough. Thanks so much for hanging out.
Thank you very much for having us, guys. Thank you, Matt and Dave. You've been fantastic. Let's podcast more on Patreon.
Let's do it. Let's go over there.
Yeah, let's do that. All right, guys, I think for now that was this week's Guitar Dads Podcast.
All right, keep rocking live. We'll catch you on the flip.